tradition of Marx. And first of all, let me say Happy Mother's Day also, and I threw out some statements on Mother's Day, which was, as you all know, was a day to end war. So we've still got a ways to go on that. But at 1 o'clock, there will be a Mother's Day feast here, and that's why there are a lot of balloons and other paraphernalia. But we're going to have to stop promptly at 12:30 because they're going to take over and start, I think they're having fried chicken, lamb, all kinds of good things. There are menus out on the window there, so enjoy. But we'll have about a hour or so presentation, and then we'll have a fund appeal, and Q&A. And Raj will be the moderator for that. Do you want to introduce Mehmet, or shall I?
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, Mehmet needs no introduction. I think he's the reason everybody is here today. He objects to being called a young Turk, but so I guess we can call him an old Turk.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, he's very knowledgeable in this topic, and we always benefit and look forward to his talk. So, Mehmet.
Thank you very much. Let me just adjust one thing. I need a microphone. Okay. Good. That's okay. All right, that's okay. First of all, thank you so much for coming on Mother's Day, and Happy Mother's Day to everybody here. Also, I'd like to thank Jean because this talk was supposed to happen about 2 months ago, but we had some presentation that was really, we had to do on Venezuela, and so we changed the time. So, but it worked out fine because in the meantime, the elections in Turkey happened, the local elections on March 31st. So now we have also, that to talk about. I'd like to give a summary, first of all, because in my presentations, I usually get bogged down in details and the general theme usually gets lost. So I'd like to put that in there so that, when you are looking at the events that happened and some analysis there, you can put the relationship. My presentation is going to be on, first of all, imperialism. The reason why imperialism is the main theme when talking about Turkey. I love giving this example, is that when you're talking about, let's say, a fish, if you don't talk about the water, then there is no way understanding how fish lives and its anatomy and the things it does, if we don't have an understanding of imperialism. And so that's why the relationship that I would like to put here is that Turkey became, in the age of imperialism, when capitalism changed. So let's take a look at that, and then that will give us an understanding of why things work the way it is.
Move a little bit away.
Yeah, why things work the way it is in Turkey. Maybe we can do a generalization. Is Turkey an exception? Is Turkey different than the rest of the neo-colonial countries? We can discuss these. But I am seeing a generalization of things that are happening in Turkey to around the world to other neo-colonial countries. And not only that, but I am looking at Turkey as a fascist country. And this fascism may not be the fascism that you have seen in 1934s on the streets of Munich or in Germany. Because, again, the development of capitalism, the development of imperialism, kind of forces itself as fascism in the world that we are living. And it is not an accident that we have Trump. I believe that Trump was needed. I believe that we are not going to go back to the bourgeois democracy days that we have seen here. But countries like Turkey never enjoyed what we call bourgeois democracy. So I'm going to try to go there as I give the examples. Again, in the summary, if I see Turkey as fascist, does fascism leave with elections? No, it does not. Especially in countries like Turkey, where fascism is an institutional governance. It is the type of state. That is why the elections we're going to talk about towards the end is not a way that we're going to see fascism end. And get prepared, we're going towards there, even in the bourgeois democratic countries like in the United States. Why? Because of the level of imperialism. Why? Because the crisis of capitalism has become a continuous crisis. Yes, it still does go up and down, but what we are seeing is that the crisis continues, and that requires different measures. And bourgeois democracy is no longer sufficient to keep the masses entertained by something else. So, again, as a summary, the imperialism is in crisis in the world today. So we are looking at the water to examine the fish. This crisis has led to decline of imperialism as we have come to see it. But this decline also brought in other contenders, other countries that have been waiting. It's the same thing that happened in World War I, World War II. The ones who have developed, some capitalist countries who have developed and want a piece of the pie, and they want bigger piece of the pie. So they are emerging now. What some call it as multipolar world. Now that, while this game is being played at the top level between United States, Russia, European Union, but it has other meanings for neo-colonial countries. For a monopolar world, it's easy. You have one boss, you go after it. But now some cracks are coming in imperialism. New bosses may emerge. Hey, you've been, downtrodden, and you've been, subjected to so much humiliation and everything. Hey, maybe this is your chance to see if you can find a new boss and to gain some crumbs, more crumbs for yourself. This is where Turkey is. It shows itself in Syria. It shows itself in the negotiations between the United States. It shows itself with the relations with Venezuela. It shows itself with the relations with Iran. And I'm sure this goes on in other countries as well, as more voices are coming out against the unspeakable terms that you used to have with imperialism before. We are seeing, like in Philippines, Duterte is coming up. Okay, and you don't know which way he's going to go, but he is, right out there. And you have other rulers that are coming up more towards fascism. We are looking at Brazil. We are looking at other places. Look at European Union, how to the right it's being, flown. Of course, there are resistances. We're going to see, as in Turkey. So I want to start with again Karl Marx. Coming to imperialism, one of the features of imperialism is the finance capital, dominance of finance capital. And the relationships that we have between the imperialist countries and the neo-colonials is no longer, although we see those some, but is no longer the old occupation, invasion, right out rape and everything. they have refined their ways, the same way that the capitalists have refined exploitation from the feudal times. You don't see the exploitation in capitalism. You think that it's a fair day's job for a fair day's wage and there is no exploitation. You sign contracts, you should be happy, but there's exploitation going on. Imperialism has changed in that sense as well. What we call neo-colonialism is the way that finance capital exploits you without a need of direct intervention, direct invasion. But yes, if you go out of line, you will get that too. So the change in capitalism was even there at the times of Marx, around 1850s. Look what it says. It was not the French bourgeoisie that ruled under Louis Philippe, but one faction of it. Bankers, stock exchange kings, railway kings, owners of coal and iron mines and forests. A part of the landed proprietors associated with them, the so-called financial aristocracy. It sat on the throne. It dictated laws in the chambers. It distributed public offices from cabinet portfolios to tobacco bureau posts. We're going to see this happening exactly to the word in Turkey and in other places. Again, since the finance aristocracy made the laws, was at the head of the administration of the state, had command of all the organized public authorities, dominated public opinion through the actual state of affairs and through the press, the same prostitution, the same shameless cheating, the same mania to get rich was repeated in every sphere, from the court of the cafe born, that's ill-reputed cafes, to get rich not by production, but by pocketing the already available wealth of others, clashing every moment with the bourgeois laws themselves. An unbridled assertion of unhealthy and dissolute appetites manifested itself particularly at the top of bourgeois society. Lusts wherein wealth derived from gambling naturally seeks its satisfaction, where pleasure becomes debauched, where money, filth and blood commingle. The finance aristocracy, in its mode of acquisition as well as in its pleasures, is nothing but the rebirth of the lumpen proletariat on the heights of bourgeois society. I could not have put it better myself. This is the summary of Turkey. This is the summary actually of the United States becoming. The lumpen proletariat is now the president. This is where we have come.
That's a good word for him.
Now in imperialism, when these changes happen from Marx's time and Lenin comes in and he identifies what imperialism is, and it has many features, but one is the bank and the rise of finance capital that I want to call your attention to, and the last one, parasitism and the decay of capitalism. It's very interesting that the word decay he uses, and that's precisely how the Turkish left has looked to the history of the capitalism in Turkey. They have always contended that capitalism in Turkey was not how capitalism should have been, like Marx explained in 1850s, but it is the decayed capitalism that we see in neocolonialism. Why? Because countries like Turkey, born when imperialism was in its place, not the free market capitalism at the time of Marx. So that's why they had a birth defect. And that continues today as the DNA of these countries. So Lenin says, if it were necessary to give the briefest possible definition of imperialism, we should have to say that imperialism is the monopoly stage of capitalism. And today, in neocolonial countries, nothing happens outside of monopolies. And actually in the, I would say that in the, metropole countries as well.
Outside of what?
Monopolies.
Monopolies.
Yeah. We have to understand that there is not this capitalism here and imperialism there. It's not like that. They are one and the same. So imperialism is the capitalism of the 20th and the 21st century. the imperialism is in decline as capitalist contradictions become more severe. I just spoke a little bit about that. But one thing that is happening is that the crisis of capitalism is deepening. But the world has been already divided between the powers. So this, of course, exacerbates the contradictions. But intercapitalist contradictions previously resolved with military conflicts are no longer valid. Technology and nuclear power is the result of this. Remember, I'm not saying imperialist to neo-colonial countries. This is between the imperialist countries, like European Union and the United States looks like are not going to go into a nuclear war. Okay, they join forces, but they are in fierce competition for markets, as it was done before. Decline of imperialism brings emergence of new contenders. A multipolar world is emerging, and US is giving concessions to emerging powers of Europe, Russia, China, and India. And US sanctions and dictates are not being taken very seriously by the contenders. Look at this. Just last week's news. US puts more sanctions on Iran. Just today, Iran delivered a huge tank load of oil to Syria. Turkey openly said it's not going to abide by the sanctions. This is never, heard before. Russia doesn't care. China doesn't care. United States puts sanctions here and there. Maybe for Venezuela it is happening, but it is not like before. It's not the God's word anymore. So we have to see these cracks that are happening. The ruling party in Turkey for 16 or nearly 17 years now is the Justice Development Party. And it is the darling of the US, the EU, the liberals. It's a pro-capitalist, Islamic, right-wing. And the one thing, if it defines the Justice Party is corruption, corruption, corruption. Let's remember what Marx was saying, lumpen proletariat at the wheels, okay? New and emerging capitalists, mostly in the construction sector. Production is not important for these people. It's construction because it's easy. You don't risk it. And it's not construction by itself. It's with government funds. So, elected with the unwavering support of the US. I just learned this actually when I was preparing for this. I thought that the first time Erdogan went to prison was for an Islamic Sharia poem that he read. It was all about, our mosques are will become our, the soldiers' homes, and the minarets are going to be our bayonets, and we're going to chop their heads off, and we're going to attack them. So he was sent to prison. But when he came out, the first person that ever kind of congratulated him was the US ambassador. And even before that, Erdogan was a project. Let me repeat this. Erdogan is a project. When he was the mayor of Istanbul, can anybody tell me which other mayor has in the world, United States ambassador, has gone to his office and had chat and talks with? This was long before he was elected. Erdogan is a project. Erdogan has won the first Muslim country leader that has won awards from Israel for benefiting, United States, the Zionist lobby for his efforts on helping Zionism and Israel. Erdogan is a project. True to how Marx describes the financial aristocracy as lumpen proletariat, Erdogan received his first GSI. Oh, yeah, I was coming to that. I thought that was the first time he went to prison. No, he went to prison for attacking an election official. He went there, accused him of being drunk, and tried to drag him to a hospital to get him to, admit that he's drunk and everything, which wasn't. The guy that he was trying to drag actually carried a gun. And he could have put down Erdogan right then and there. But he said, since he's a political person, I want this to be registered as an attack. So he went, Erdogan ran. Erdogan ran and hid. And then they found him, and he was put in prison, and then he paid for it. But when he was running, you know who helped him? It's a street mafia gang guy who's running a bar. And remember, Erdogan is the Muslim. And this guy helps Erdogan run from justice. So these are the relationships that, that people at the top have. Okay, today they are religious. They bow down and pray. Tomorrow they are hanging and drinking with the bars and mafia people. And without this, Turkey cannot be ruled. Back and forth, yeah, Erdogan is now, you know, going back and forth, trying to find the new boss in the world in imperialism. Trump is not the only one. Emerging Putin and others are coming up, and Rouhani seems to be just not caring for the US sanctions, and it's a trading partner, so Erdogan just bypasses US and does trades. Now, it's like a simple thing. We say, oh, Erdogan is now entertaining Putin. But this happened before in the past. In 1960, a very pro-NATO, pro-US, you know, paranoid anti-communist prime minister came to Roosevelt to ask for $300 million loan. Why? Because he wanted Turkey to industrialize. Turkey is an agricultural country. And Roosevelt said, no, we need you to do agricultural production because you need to feed NATO. He didn't like this. The prime minister didn't like this. And so during those days, and also Cyprus negotiations, he went to London to negotiate on Cyprus. In very suspicious conditions, his plane crashed. But he did not die. But he got the message. So while he's in the hospital in London, immediately he signed the contract for Cyprus. He knew what was happening. And he turned to Soviet Union as well during those days because of this $300 million loan that US won't give him. And he made this announcement on April. By 27th of May, a coup happened and he was arrested and hung. But the most important thing is that this military coup that happened, the announcement on the radio came from this gentleman you're seeing there. He is a grey wolf, fascist, open Nazi, and one of the leaders of the coup, and he is a CIA-trained NATO correspondent in Turkey. And he came to the microphone, announced that this was a military coup, and then started repeating that we are loyal to NATO, we are loyal to CENTO. Those people may remember CENTO. It was another US-led organization of the Middle East. So,
Which year was this?
1960. So a message was received loud and clear. This is just the moments before he was hung. The 20th century marks a turning point from the old capitalism to the new, from the domination of capital in general to the dominance of finance capital. So finance capital is in Turkey through government, through banks. But let's look at Turkey's history to see how they came here. One thing it was that Turkey was born in 1923 from the Ottomans, okay, so 1923. But the minute the Ottomans collapsed, there were about a handful, 5 or 6 factories in the whole empire. Why am I saying this? The capitalism had not even fully, not even half, entered the empire. It was a feudal empire, and in 1923, here's a new country, they say, just, you know, like overnight. So here we are, new, and the decision was made that we're going to be capitalist, we're going to be Western, We're going to be, you know, like all the modern things that you can think of. The old is gone. But there's a problem with this. They are not born, Turkey is not born in 1840s, 1820s, 1850s, when the capitalism was the free market capitalism. Now we are in 1920s, folks. This is the full rise of imperialism. We don't have the free market, the free enterprise. It's the monopoly stage of capitalism. But Turkey is born into this. It still has the idea that it will be like England, okay? So let's build some factories and we'll get there as well. No problem. We'll do it in a jiffy. I'm not going to go through this too much, but when you look at the classes in Ottoman Empire, it is mostly the ones who really drive the economy were what's called the minorities. Minorities in Ottoman Empire are not based on ethnicity, but mostly on religion. And religion also, of course, you know, relates to ethnicity as well. So it's the Greeks in Istanbul, the Armenians, the Levantines. These are the remnants of the old traders and everything. And Ottomans relied on these. Why? Because of the traditional development of feudalism in Ottoman and their paranoia about the developments and on progress, that they kept these minorities take care of business and dirty business and a business that nobody would do, like banking, trading, arts, crafts, factory production. These were all given to those dirty minorities to do it, and we are so high up that we won't bother working in these things. The way that an Ottoman could go up in the ladder was to wait for the palace to call him to serve for the palace. It's called kapıkulu. You are the slave at the door. This is the way that the Ottomans looked at as progress, okay? This is the best job you can get. I mean, it's a dream job, like Bill Gates, okay? So that's what it is. So Muslim middle class was eroding, and the peasants carried the load because they were the ones who were doing the production in the whole, hinterland. But everybody that came in and their mother taxed them or robbed them and everything. So it was very common that there would be huge uprisings of the peasants. And the urban proletariat, very interesting, is that whatever there were, or urban proletariat, and most of them were actually, again, minorities. They worked in the factories. They worked in the craft and, whatever was available. There were about 50,000 workers at that time. Unionization is a very, 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 late phenomenon. It was not heard of. Actually, the unions were not established by the working class. It was the intellectuals and also the minority intellectuals who brought this concept to Turkey that workers could organize. Well, of course, the Ottomans immediately closed them down and everything. There was, struggles, but. 1908 is when a assembly is forced upon the Sultan, and I look at this as the first attempt of a bourgeois revolution that never got completed, because the Ottomans, there were two things. First of all, the Sultan closed it right away and so on and so forth, but the people who forced this assembly, who carried on later the Armenian genocide and who carried on to build the Turkish country now, they did not look at freedoms as something that is really needed. Remember, in the free market capitalism development of it, the bourgeoisie at some point played a progressive role because they were fighting against the feudals. They needed those freedoms to bring the working class to their side so that they can fight together against the feudal lords. But then when they established their dictatorship, of course, the thing changed. But this time never happened in Turkey. This so-called, even progressive years did not happen. But what is the consequence of this? The ideas of freedom, the ideas of solidarity, ideas of egalitarianism did not enter. We never went through that phase. So these are foreign concepts. What are you talking about? Even when, before the 1908, there was a Tanzimat where the Sultan was forced to bring some changes. One of the changes was that the non-Muslims were going to be, in many things, were going to be equal to Turks and the Muslims. People revolted. How dare you? Because an Armenian could not ride a horse if there was any Turk around. That was banned. No, it was just, look at the slavery. It was the same thing. It's just that it was constitutional. It was the way life is. This is what Turks and Muslims believe, that they are the masters and non-Muslims are not. So when bringing this equality and everything, this just did not jive, because we did not go through the bourgeois democratic revolutions. I'm going to go through. When the Committee of the Union in Progress came to power, they understood that the reason why capitalism did not flourish in Ottomans and why Ottomans were so backward, they thought that the reason were the non-Muslims. Empire used to be a collection of Muslims, non-Muslims, this and that. The Ottomans didn't care as long as you paid taxes. Who cares? But now, with the new emergence of nationalism in Europe, Turks started becoming nationalists. Well, the Armenians did too. Arabs did too. So did Kurds. So did Bulgarians. So did the Greeks. This was the fashion of the day with the capitalism. But the Turks' solution to the problem of being backward was that let's get rid of anybody who's not Muslim. That was clear. And they decided on the Armenian genocide long time before the genocide happened. Because that was a solution, the final solution. That's why Hitler says that whatever I learned, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was my teacher. So Kemal Atatürk is the teacher of Adolf Hitler. The Turkish identity is conjured up. Even one of their ideologues openly says that, we tried to push in, being Turkishness, and people revolted everywhere saying, what the hell are you talking about? We are Ottoman. Where does this Turkishness comes from? And it's very hard to speak, talk about this with the Turkish nationalists today, because they still believe that Turkishness has always been from, the middle of Asia and this and that. It is important. Why? Because we're going to see that even in today's policies, that is a central theme of the nationalists. Turks developed the inferiority complex because now the others are equal to them and they have been left behind. They did not work in the new emerging capitalist, factories and production and everything. And now comes all these non-Muslims who know banking, who know languages. My God, what a concept! These guys most of Ottoman's diplomats were Armenian because they know how to speak other languages, guys. This is so simple. But this brings, the inferiority complex to Turks. Oh, now our slaves are now sitting on top of our heads. What is this going to be? So, I want to go. Even the Arabs, they are the perpetual slaves for us. That's what the Turks said, and this is, I don't want to spend time, but they were collecting the civilian Arabs and then just machine gunning them down. And even, Kazım Karabekir, the general asked, what are you doing? And this is a very good reply that the Bekir Sami says, I am settling the account of 400 years of Ottoman history by mowing down Arab civilians. because they wanted independence, because they wanted their own, country. That's it. How could they dare? Armenian genocide, I'm not going to give you all the gruesome pictures and everything. Many reasons for that. Now, new Turkey is born. And these are so important, that's why I put them in red, is that today, any issue that you're going to talk about Turkey, these are the issues that you're going to finally go to. One land, one nation, one flag, one leader, one